Uno, dos, tres, quantum, cinco, seis.
The point of a research program, my dear Hogan, is not to find out new information. We already know that the German pilots are superior. Here we are merely furnishing scientific proof.
The point of controlled opposition is not to silence the majority, but merely to constrain the most extreme examples of the majority. I'm Aryan Archive, and this is Chaos Theory, so let's jump into it and talk about the two major topics on everybody's mind in the quote unquote conservative spectrum. And those particular topics are the exposure of Dailywire as a controlled opposition front, the exposure of Ben Shapiro as a thieving, lying scumbag, and the opposition of Republican donors to the selection of Harmeet Dillon to be the next RNC chair. Now, these events are probably more related than one might initially suspect. And to understand this, we have to understand exactly what controlled opposition is, what controlled opposition does, and why controlled opposition is a no good, horrible, terrible, bad thing. In essence, controlled opposition is when one party limits the ability of another party to function. In this case, specifically, we're looking at donors who have uh, fiscally invested, that is, financially invested in certain business opportunities or various events, who are explicitly looking to make sure they get the maximum return on their investment. And they're not going to get their return on investment if things don't go exactly as planned. And it's these institutionalized entities who often are incredibly resistant to change. We saw this across the past several years when Republicans in the Senate and the House were aggressively anti Donald Trump. Now, it's not that there was anything wrong with Donald Trump policies, it was the fact that Donald J. Trump, as president, forced these congressmen and senators to actually do their job. President Trump pushed the line and made these congressional representatives and these senatorial representatives actually show up to work to do the work, to actually represent the interests on which those politicians had been elected. And a good number of politicians extremely dislike the idea of, having to actually work for a living. And this became incredibly important when looking across the media landscape, where the conservative viewpoint, and we're going to go off on a tangent here real quick. I detest the phrase conservative because it is not a self generated, self identifying construct or concept used to describe those who are aligned against socialist parties. Rather, the idea of a conservative party is one that has been inflicted upon what I prefer to call foundationalists, those who are building on a strong foundation and are trying to keep that foundation from eroding. Now, the idea of the conservative is you are conserving, you are holding back, you are limiting. And if your construct is that you are self limiting, this has an extremely negative connotation. So, acquiescing, giving up, and saying, yes, we're conservative, or I'm physically conservative because I'm limiting how much I'm spending, it just makes you sound like an idiot. It makes you sound like a moron, and it is tacitly allowing the Democrat Party to call you an idiot and for you to go, why, yes, I am an idiot because I'm a conservative. I'm self limiting. Yeah, don't do that. It's dumb. It's a really bad idea. If you're going to self identify as something, get a new term, self-identify by something that fits what you're actually doing or what your ideology is or what you believe in. So I strongly prefer the term foundationalist, and I have a real hard time giving credibility to anyone who self-identifies as a conservative because I don't think they really understand the linguistic trap that they have fallen into by self-identifying as an insult. So, let's keep this moving on. So, now that we have an overlay of the conservative movement is an insulting term given to a movement that, okay, is fairly trying to rein in socialist tendencies. If we go back to talked about this in several previous videos, the you can just draw a line out on paper. Put the line is responsibility. One side is those who have responsibility or take responsibility, and those who do not take responsibility. On the side of those who do not take responsibility but control the means of production, doesn't matter if you're producing product, words, phrases, literature, publishing. If you're producing something, if you control the means of that production and you are not responsible for it, you are a socialist. On the other end, if you control the means of production and you are responsible for it, no one else is responsible for it, you are where the buck stops, you're actually an anarchist because you're against a government telling you what to do. You are responsible, someone else isn't. That's a core concept. So where does that put Republicans? Republicans are actually in the middle of this line. Republicans are the ones who are trying to find a balance between not being responsible while controlling the means of production and being responsible while controlling the means of production to find the middle ground there. And it's because of this, because we don't actually have anarchists in Congress or anarchists don't get elected. We don't have anyone who's truly on the political right of the political right wing ideology that's represented in Congress. So if you're a Republican, you're in the middle, and all you have to deal with are those who are on the political left. What happens? You tend to go to the left because that's the only people you're balancing with. And just to frame this for you real quickly, the closest thing we have to an actual real anarchist, a real right wing persona in the world today would actually be Elon Musk. Yeah, that's right. On the scale of responsibility, Elon Musk controls the means of production and he takes responsibility for what he controls. That makes him a hardcore capitalist and also an anarchist because he's against the government control. He's the one in control, not someone over him. All right, so let's bring this back now that we've gone off onto a deep political tangent, framing the idea of political ideology, and now we can get a better handle on what actually happened with the Daily Wire. Now, one of the things that I started bringing up when I started this video is a list of the posts that I made on Google Plus. And among those posts is a note when Ben Shapiro gave a speech, I believe at CPAC, at the Conservative Political Action Conference. Now, again, if you're self identifying as conservative, you're accepting an insult. CPAC really should be renamed. But it's probably not going to be because the people behind CPAC, as we have recently discovered, are quite fine with being insulted every time they open their mouth. Now, here's the thing that I have in my notes, because somebody back then started whispering to me that Ben Shapiro wasn't the conservative that he appeared to be. Well, okay, you've just heard my feelings on that. But here's the critical point. This whisper was soon echoed, and then echoed again. Hangouts, chats, various private messages. I had a number of different entities all saying the same thing. There was something wrong with Ben Shapiro, and I needed to be on the lookout for this. Now, some of the things I've gone on in previous videos is how to deconstruct propaganda, on how to deconstruct whether or not you are being lied to or whether or not somebody is taking you for a ride. And one of the tricks that I say, or that I bring up, is if there is a live video of this person speaking and they are trying to convince you of something, do two things. First thing is watch the video but turn the audio off. Take note of the physical actions being made. Second thing, turn the video off but play the audio. Now, listen for gaps, listen for breaths, listen for responses. Listen to the actual cadence of how the words are delivered. Now, this is an interest. If you want to do this for fun, bring up episodes of The Big Bang Theory and just do the same thing. Listen for how the audience responds to the jokes, watch the visual cues on screen without the audio, and then you'll find something interesting. The Big Bang Theory, as many people already know, is actually anti nerd culture. It's actually mocking the idea of intelligence. And you pick this up when you realize that the jokes are not being given to who you think they're being given to because of the camera work. The audio and the camera don't match up, but more precisely, how much time the camera tries to not be focused on the main characters. It's kind of an interesting little study. Like I said, that's something you can just do if you're kind of curious as to see how this works, because it's one of the most dramatic examples in recent history of an easy to watch YouTube shorts, YouTube clips, where you can just do little bits at a time and go, hang on, that joke didn't land where I thought it landed. They're laughing at them, not with them. Exactly, that's the point. And when you can pick up these subtle differences, when you start learning how to distinguish what you're hearing versus what you're seeing, what's being presented versus what's being told, you can start to apply these techniques to other categories of speech, of live speech or recorded speech. And you can start to form patterns and basis. And the thing was, when I, at this speech for Ben Shapiro that did at CPAC, one of the first things I noticed visually is that he was the only presenter there who appeared to have a bodyguard on stage right behind him. Now, technically, if you are a foundationalist and you're speaking at a foundationalist conference, you should be surrounded by friends. Why do you need a bodyguard? Why do you need somebody who's standing right there behind the stage? Are you worried about girls up and rushing the stage? Well, if you're at a foundationalist event, chances are the girls there are probably going to be well behaved, probably aren't going to be drunk, and probably can constrain themselves to keep them. They're not going to throw themselves at you. Just don't see it happening. I mean, could, just, I don't see it happening. So why was the bodyguard up there? Why was there somebody visibly in the camera the entire time trying to look intimidating and failing? And then paying closer attention to Ben Shapiro and how he was talking, where he was looking at, how he's framing his words, and how he's framing his cadence. And I found an interesting conclusion. And this is something that you would normally only maybe see with cult leaders. Uh, say like David Koresh, or say Ron L. Hubbard of Scientology. When you want to convince someone of something you do not personally believe in, but you want them to believe in it. The thing is, Ben Shapiro's actions, his cadence, his visible demeanor, the entire package of how the presentation was made did not match with somebody who is making a speech under duress, somebody who is forcibly reading a script because they have to read a script, whether they're reading it for a paycheck or something is being done to cause them to have to go through the script and just do the script. No, that didn't match up. This was definitely more pointed, and my explicit note was I found myself comparing Ben Shapiro to L. Ron Hubbard. This is more of a confidence scam. You're trying to make money by selling people on an idea or a construct that you personally don't believe in, but you know that if you can get other people to believe in it, you can make lots of money off of it. That's the entire basis of Scientology. So this was kind of an interesting uh, premise to develop after just watching one video recording of Ben Shapiro. And so I started looking up more Ben Shapiro clips, and I kept seeing these same ticks, these same reactions, these same cadence. So for me, I came to the conclusion that Ben Shapiro was a confidence artist. He is somebody who gets up on stage and is doing something to make money. Doesn't matter what it is, he's going to sell a line because it's going to return a profit. Now, what he's doing is not actually illegal. I mean, if it was, motivational speakers around the world would be locked up for charging money to go and say something that means absolutely nothing. So he's not doing anything illegal. He claims to be a lawyer, but I can't find any cases that he argued in or argued for that would suggest he's anything more than maybe a contract lawyer. I mean, those do exist. Lockpicking lawyer, for example, is just a contract lawyer or was a contract lawyer. So the idea of somebody just being having studied in contract literature, okay, well, now that's kind of disturbing when we get to today's news because there's never been proof. There's never been hardcore proof that Ben Shapiro is a lying scumbag thief. He's a confidence artist. Ben Shapiro gets close to people. He encourages them, he pushes them along, he prods them, he gives them confidence, he lifts them up, and then he sells them on a dream or a package. And then he did it with the wrong person. He did it with somebody who maybe runs in the same circles I do, maybe has access to the same information I have access to, maybe knows some of the same people I know. Maybe got the same needlings that Ben Shapiro wasn't on the up and up. Maybe got the same needlings that there's something odd about the way that the Dailywire makes money, that there's something not kosher here. And the big question that I think a number of people have been almost trying not to address is why did the Daily Wire shove a contract at Steven Crowder? Why now? What was the impetus for sending over terms of agreement that would be, or they would expect it to be negotiated upon? See, I'm not questioning what was in that agreement of those terms because there's actually been, by this point, several brilliant beatdowns of just how atrociously bad these terms were. And the best one to date, I think, that I have seen is from Shad Brooks of Shadiversity, who used his Night's Watch channel. That's KNIGHTS, Night's Watch, to go over in a 3 hour plus. I mean, come on, I do 3 hour streams. So seeing someone else do it, it's kind of like, whoa, someone who's not me or I'm never going to say Drax's name right. I'm just not. Someone like that, we're going to do a deep dive on something. Here we go. Shad and Brooks ripped the contract apart, the terms of agreement, pointing out how so much of it was explicitly designed to steal Steven Crowder's mug lineup, to steal Steven Crowder's content in perpetuity, to keep that content for use by the Daily Wire. It Shannon Brooks just does this brilliant beat down. I mean, I could not do better myself going line by line. I can't. I can't. Yeah, okay. I could take, but it'll take me like 4 weeks to script, and then it'll take me like 10 hours to actually record. Yeah, no one's gonna sit through that. So just go watch Shad M. Brooks' brutal takedown of just how bad the terms of agreement were. And to understand the critical point here, this is not a contract or a terms of agreement that friends would give to another friend. This is not how you do business with people that you have a friendship with or a kinship with. This is how you treat people that you think are dirt, that you think are below you, that you think are not worthy to be in your presence. This is the kind of contract that a king would give to a slave to say, I'm not going to kill you, just sign here. That's how bad that contract is. That's how bad those terms of agreement were. And to say that, oh, we just thought that Crowder would just come back and just negotiate. No, because that's not how this works. You own the record, presented this to him, presented this contract to Crowder as a friend, on the vain hopes that Crowder will go, oh, if my friends are giving me this contract, they're not going to try to do anything nasty. But Crowder didn't fall for the bait. Now, there's a good question here. Why didn't Crowder fall for the bait? Why didn't he go for this? What put a bee in Crowder's bonnet that he needed to take a closer look at his contract, that he needed to redact information on his contract, and then let other people know about how bad this contract was? What tipped Crowder off? What was the key? Could it be that Crowder suspected that Ben Shapiro was a lying scumbag the entire time? Could it be that Crowder has dealt with enough Democrats in his time, on his show, on his channel, with the Rhino Glenn Beck at the Blaze? I'm not sure if I say Glenn Beck or Glenn Beck, because I really don't like Glenn Beck after some of his stunts. Uh, so what tipped Crowder off? Why was he looking for traps? Why did he want to blow this up? Why was he recording phone calls? And they're going, he recorded friends. No, he didn't. He recorded adversaries. He recorded people he suspected were not on the up and up. He recorded people who he had reason to believe were lying. And then he proved it. Crowder proved that these were lies. Why? Is it because that so many years ago Crowder got the same whispers I got? That Ben Shapiro is not to be trusted, that the Dailywire is not to be trusted, that it's a financial front to control the opposition, that is how the Democrats keep Republican voices, to keep foundationalist voices from gaining ground, to fiscally, financially constrict Republican foundationalist voices if they dare go off the plantation and say something that's contrary or counter to the Democrat narrative, because that's what the contract did. The contract that was sent to Steven Crowder effectively limited Steven Crowder to within the constraints of big tech censorship. That you cannot say anything that goes counter to the big tech narrative, or you lose money. Know what that is? That's theft. When you're saying that we're going to take money away from you. That's a pretty big deal. And again, really big point here is the opposition control. The control of content that others produce in such a way as to constrict or constrain the free sharing of information. Now, yes, I'm quite well aware that the screen just went black and I'm not really sure what's going on. Let's see if I can force out of here. We have a I have a hard lock. Alright, looks like my X session has gone haywire. So give me a second while I go deal with that. And yeah, this is a different project that I'm working on. Anyways, so let's take a second here and bring this around and look at it from a different perspective. Where is money going? Who funds the Dailywire? Who puts cash in those bank accounts? Where does Dailywire get the money that it needs in order to post videos? Where does it get the money to pay for hosting? Where does it get the money that it uses to pay contributors? How does it get the money to use to pay contributors? Well, they sell ads. Well, who's buying ad space? Why are they buying ad space? What's really the point of everything that the Daily Wire is doing or not doing? And this is very important to understand because you've probably heard the expression, follow the money. When somebody does something, who's paying them? Are they being paid to do this? Why are they being paid to do this? These are questions that need to be asked. Now, to be fair, the vast bulk of money that Daily Wire probably receives does come from legitimate advertisers who are looking to put a specific series of advertisements for a product or service in front of the maximum number of eyeballs they can plausibly put this advertisement in front of. And it's kind of important. Good to know that you've got a large audience. but it's how Dailywire goes about this advertisement. And again, we have to come back to a key point from earlier in that Steven Crowder, when he unveiled the contract, and let's be clear, it was a contract that Dailywire fully expected Crowder to sign without negotiation. It's given to Crowder by friends. Crowder should have had no reason to have suspected there was anything in there to be worried about. Just here's a standard contract for the Daily Wire. So now we're hosting your videos. You work for us. We're your friends. We're not going to do you wrong. And oh no, we're actually going to do you incredibly wrong. We're going to try to steal everything you've got. Let's be very clear about that. This is not a terms of agreement. This was a contract intended to be signed sight unseen on the basis that it was given to Crowder by friends. To suggest otherwise, to pretend otherwise, is not only disingenuous, it makes Daily Wire look worse than they already look, and that they were deliberately trying to run a confidence scam on Steven Crowder. But again, we come back to the question of who's buying that ad space. Who's sending money to the Daily Wire? Are they sending it just on for advertisement views because Daily Wire can guarantee a certain amount of views, or are they paying the Daily Wire because the Daily Wire can guarantee that Daily Wire contributors will not cross a political line? Now, that's a scary thought there, isn't it? What if the amount of money that Daily Wire is able to throw around, 50 million, 70 million, 120 million, what if they're able to throw it around not because they think they can make it up on sales of services, but because they know that they are being paid by Democrats to silence Republican voices? That's a very scary thought because that paints Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Bowling. I have no idea who that guy is, never heard of him before. That paints both of them in a very different and very dangerous light. And the thing is, this is not unfounded because we only have to look at the very previous history in the last election, where in Georgia, Warnock in Georgia outspent Herschel Walker nearly 3-1 and barely won by a bare percentage of votes. Herschel Walker did not have the support of the Republican National Committee. The RNC spent no funds, no advertising on Herschel Walker's campaign, leaving him out to dry. They just left him out to rot completely on his own, just abandoned him, no resources whatsoever. Now imagine for a second if Herschel Walker had actually had the support of the party on whose behalf he was running for office. Would Warnock have won the election? No, Warnock wouldn't have even had a chance. More boots on the ground, more people making phone calls, more people on street corners, more people actually getting out and campaigning that were being supported by RNC funds would have put Herschel Walker in the senatorial seat. But the RNC didn't support Walker. And he wasn't the only one. Kari Lake out in Arizona, no RNC support there either. No campaign contributions whatsoever. No money was spent on Kari's behalf by the RNC. In fact, it was quite the opposite, where Liz Cheney took money and paid for ads against Kari Lake. Now, Liz Cheney has been kicked out of her own office. She's considered a rhino, a Republican in name only. But nobody's asking the question, where did Liz Cheney get this money from? Where did Liz Cheney get the money to run ads against Kari Lake? Because Liz Cheney didn't get that money from her own fundraising. She didn't raise any money. She lost her seat. She had one of the most poor, pathetic, self-funded. Okay. I don't know if that was a low battery alarm. I just charged his headset. But it just turned off on me. Okay, so back to Liz Cheney. She lost her seat. She didn't have a good fundraising, personal fundraising. She has no fundraising power whatsoever. Where did the money come from? Where did Liz Cheney get the money to run ads against Kari Lake? Well, we already know the answer. Liz Cheney was using money that was raised for Republican candidates and spent that money on ads against a Republican candidate. And she wasn't the only one. We also now know for a fact that Mitch McConnell was using his vast resources to also direct money ostensibly raised for Republican candidates to run ads against Republican candidates through various number of shell companies. We also know that RNC money was being spent on races like Lisa Murkowski's, where there was no reason to spend several $1 million worth of campaign advertising in a race that wasn't even really contested to begin with. So we saw in a very dramatic fashion, that the RNC under Ronna McDowell was deliberately spending money everywhere but on Republican candidates. Now that's interesting. Why are Republicans, elected Republicans to office, Liz Cheney, Mitch McConnell, John Bonner, Jeff Flake, why do all of them have fundraising outreaches that were spending money on Democrat campaigns or spending money against Republican candidates? This is a very severe question to ask, and the answer is quite simple: controlled opposition. Mitch McConnell needs the status quo because Mitch McConnell needs to remain in power. MAGA, Make America Great Again, or Keep America Great Again, or Keep America Great candidates, however you want to phrase it, those candidates, they're not going to vote with Mitch McConnell. They're going to run against Mitch McConnell. They're going to kick Mitch McConnell's pals out of office. If those candidates get in, Mitch McConnell loses power. If those candidates get in, Mitch McConnell loses the money that he raises. If those candidates get in, Liz Cheney loses the money. Oh wait, that already happened. If Katie Hobbs doesn't get elected governor of Arizona, then the border will be protected. The incoming governor, Kari Lake, would certainly declare it an invasion, run in National Guard troops, and turn back those hordes of Democrat voters. And oh, all of that coyote money that's being paid into Mitch McConnell's coffers just to look the other way and not get anything done on immigration, well, all that would go away, wouldn't it? And if you think I'm being dramatic, no, I'm not. This is a very strong case of follow the money. Who's contributing to Mitch McConnell's fundraising efforts? Where is this money coming from? Who's paying who? And if I'm saying that money is coming out of Mexico cartels or cartels in Mexico, and that money is going straight into the coffers of Mitch McConnell, I'm not lying to you. I'm telling you exactly what's going on. I'm telling you who's doing it. I'm telling you where to start the investigations. Look at the financial transactions that go between Mexico and Mitch McConnell's accounts. You're going to find a link there, and that's your link to find out where cartel money is coming from. It's not that hard. This is standard law enforcement investigation. You have a suspicious activity. You have something that doesn't match up. You know that money is coming from somewhere. You get a search warrant, you search the bank records, you find out who who transferred the money, and then you go from there. That this investigation hasn't been done on any level is disgusting and is entirely a failing of US law enforcement. But it just highlights the point where controlled opposition, where the entire point of spending money to silence another party, is the modus operandi of the Republican in name only. It's how the rhino class works. It's how they stay in power. It's how they get elected. They don't spend the money that was fundraised for what they said it was being fundraised for on the things they said they were fundraising it for. Mitch McConnell's not spending money raised to elect Republican senators on electing Republican senators. Mitch McConnell is spending money that was raised to elect Republican senators on keeping people in power who will keep Mitch McConnell's financial train in motion. And there's an additional wrinkle here, and this is something that's I don't have the full information on, but we know that Mitch McConnell is married to what's her name, Elaine Chao, and we know that she's a Chinese descendant. What we don't know is whether or not Elaine's family is being held hostage in mainland China, and that Mitch McConnell either does the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party or his wife's family gets straight up murdered. Or plausibly, they may have already even been murdered, and Mitch McConnell's wife don't even know that that's actually happened. Again, this is just a new wrinkle trying to get information on this and get a trail going and figure out where to start. Can we even prove that these people are alive? That's going to take some time, and it's probably not going to be an issue that's going to be resolved quickly. But that's another story to keep an eye on, because the CCP could possibly plausibly be putting pressure on Mitch McConnell. But again, that's another financial trail, one that check the bank accounts, get warrants. We have suspicions. Where did this money come from? Why was it spent on this? Why was it not spent on this? But now we need to spin this back around and get away from Mitch McConnell. Well, we're still going to be talking about Mitch McConnell here, because there are some links here that go to who's fundraising for who's spending money where. Because now we have to focus on Ronna McDowell. Now, Ronna is related to Mitt Romney, and I made the point before that I couldn't tell you what Ronna did before she became RNC chairperson. I couldn't tell you what job she held because, quite frankly, it wasn't important. She was politically active, she was saying all the right things, she seemed to be quite agreeable, she made some good moves at first, and there wasn't any reason to really dig any deeper, or at least at that time there wasn't. And she also had the support of some politicians who maybe we didn't know any better of at the time. We weren't asking the right questions at the right time. And so we've come to find out that Ronna has been spending RNC money on luxurious travel, vacations, and business trips to exotic locales. We also found out that she spent a good chunk of money, of RNC fundraised money, Republican Party money, ostensibly raised to elect Republican candidates running for office. She was spending it on food. She was sending it to group think tanks with, I mean, what was it, 60 million alone to a DC something? And a lot of people have kind of been, asking, how are the Republicans funding Democrat candidates? Easy. You launder the money through a anonymous DC think tank who provides you some insight or analysis on a particular election. They get a fat paycheck, but they didn't actually do an analysis. You just make it up off the top of your head and say, hey, job done. They did this research. It's okay. No reason to back check it. There's no footnotes. Yeah, they just did it all internally. Here's just the final report when it's just a load of garbage designed to only answer the question in a way that the person who posed the question wanted the question answered. And that's the kind of thing that really grinds my gears. So we have proof of fiscal misconduct on the part of Ronna. We have fiscal malfeasance on the part of Mitch McConnell. We have fiscal malfeasance on the part of Liz Cheney. And they're not the only quote unquote Republicans who were sending money everywhere but to where the. Okay, let me back up a second and frame this. If you are a member of a political party and there is a city level representative or city level group for this party, there's a state level group for this party, and there's a federal level group for this party, you kind of have, as a member of the party, an expectation. That expectation is that the party will not take sides in primary fights, that the party will not contribute any money to candidates who have signed up for a primary. Rather, what the party will do at that level is they will arrange for debates. They will arrange for town halls. The party will arrange for locations. The party will arrange for radio shows where all of the candidates get together, or two or three candidates who can arrange their schedules are on this show at the same time, so they can be asked questions by the radio show host or the television host at the same time, so that the party itself is not actually taking sides at this level. It's all entirely up to the candidates. Now, the candidates can leverage these appearances as promotional material, but the candidates are by their own. They must locally fundraise from local sources and appeal to the local voters, because it's those voters who will choose the person who will win the primary, or at least that's a theoretical idea. That's the expectation. But no, that's not how this operated. Rather, the Republican Party was at the local level pumping fundraised money for the Republican Party into a single primary candidate. So effectively, we have the RNC is not actually doing its job as a local, state, or federal level representative of the party as a whole to allow the party to come to a consensus by giving the opportunities for candidates to get their views out in a I don't want to say against each other, but for the candidates to have discussions to better inform themselves to the public without the party putting its hand on the scale saying this person is the chosen one, instead leaving it up to the locality. The people have to go, okay, we've got two candidates, they're both running for the Republican seat. The Republican Party is going to be, if we go and check with the Republican Party website, that's the best way to find out where we can get the information on these two candidates, where they're going to be talking, where they're going to be meeting, how they're going to be meeting, how we can submit questions to them. And it's not what the Republican Party has been doing. Now, if you're wondering why I'm not talking about the Democrat Party, that's corrupt from the get go. It's never going to operate like that. Never has operated like that as far as I can tell, going all the way back to when it was the British nobles and there wasn't even a United States of America at that time. And yes, yes, the Democrat Party has roots in the British nobility class. They are the descendants of the British nobility who were very much against the United States leaving Britain's control. Just another fact you have to keep in mind when you talk about how rotten the Democrat. They've been rotten from inception. They've been rotten from the time of Benedict Arnold. That's how long this corruption has been going on with the Democrats. You do not expect them to do anything on the level. Okay, rant over. So the RNC has not been doing what the expectation of the party's job is, or the expectation of the various chapters of the party are. And in fact, this is coming back around to roost where grassroots local Republican parties are coming together and they are drafting articles, in some cases of a recall vote, of votes of no confidence, where they're pulling people out of seats and letting people know that the candidate is being censured for not following the party platform. And this is another thing as we go up when there is the Republican National Convention and everyone gets together, the party actually votes on a platform. And the platform is what all of the candidates who are running in the party election all say, we agree to this platform. This is what we are running on. This is what we represent. This is what legislation we will try to get accomplished in the next legislative session should we be elected. But we crucially have seen that Donald J. Trump was the first Republican president since Ronald Reagan to force the party to actually implement the party platform. George W. Bush did not push the party to implement the party platform. Bush Jr. did not push the party to implement the party platform. So Donald J. Trump, first time for an two or three entire generations that they saw a president saying the party, this is your platform, you do this. And again, we go back to earlier, the Republican, the swamp, the GOP swamp, the rhinos, they didn't appreciate actually having to work for a living. But that brings us back to what's going on with Ronna McDaniel. She hasn't been doing her job. She, quite frankly, hasn't even been trying to do the job as GOP chairperson. She has not been pushing the party. She has not been directing funds. She has not been holding elected representatives' feet to the fire to fulfill the platform that they were elected on. And that's brought up Harmeet Dillon. Now, I've heard of Harmeet Dillon before, and I couldn't have told you where, but I've heard the name before. And then as you research Harmeet Dillon, you find out that she's a lawyer. And what's more, she actually has a law practice. What's more, she actually has been involved in a number of court cases, a number of very right-wing foundationalist style court cases. And here's the thing, Harmeet Dillon actually is on record in these court cases arguing for what are aspects of the Republican Party platform. She's arguing for the foundationalist ideals. She's arguing for a limited government. She's arguing for more oversight of what the government does. She's arguing over election rights. She's arguing over free speech. I mean, just you can go through. You can just look her case record up. You can look her quotes up. There's an entire record here of what Harmeet Dillon has done in the past and the lines that she has drawn. Now that's incredibly important because we actually now know something about Harmeet Dillon. Because we know what she argues for. We know how she argues for it. We know that Donald J. Trump tapped her law firm to be his defense for the January 6th hearings. So let me get this straight. Harmeet Dillon has been one of the lawyers responsible for bringing to light that the vast majority of violent actions taken on January 6th as Donald J. Trump was leaving Washington, that those violent actions were taken by government employees, by those who were at that moment on the clock receiving a paycheck from the federal government. Well, now that's quite interesting. I haven't exactly seen that in the mainstream news. Haven't seen any talk of facial recognition matching and how the violent perpetrators almost had 100% matches with known federal employee databases. That's an interesting bit of information we're not seeing passed around now, is it? And there's a question we haven't seen asked in Congress. We haven't seen anyone confront the January 6th Select Committee over, all right, here's a list of names. We know that these people are federal employees. We know that these people were taking a federal paycheck as of January 7th. We know that these people were committing acts of violence and property destruction on January 6th. Why have their names not been released? What agencies do these people actually work for? And of course, when you get the sputtering in response that, oh, we don't have access, well, why don't you have access to this information? We have this information. You should have every bit of information that we have. You do not have this is disconcerting. So we're talking about a lawyer who's helped bring some of the biggest scandals, the biggest acts of treason imaginable of the Democrat Party trying to overthrow a duly elected president, stealing an election, getting federally employed agents to stage an insurrection. The biggest piece of kabuki theater you could possibly imagine. And Harmeet Dillon has been at the center of this, helping to bring this to light. That's the kind of person who wants to be the RNC chair. That's the person to say, hire me, I'm applying for this job. And somebody wants to say, don't hire that woman. Somebody's saying, oh no, we want Ronna. Somebody's saying, oh no, we're not going to give the Republican Party any more money if you don't put Ronna back in power. I have a string of four-letter words that would be incredibly inappropriate for me to utter under any circumstances. There are things I would love to say. There are names I would love to speak. There are people I would dearly adore to call out. But here's the reality of the situation. The Republican megadonors, those who are saying, hire Ronna McDaniel, or we will no longer donate to the Republican Party. We're through. We're walking away. We have the numbers of what the Republican Party spent. We have the numbers on how much Ronna McDaniel misappropriated for personal expenses. We have the numbers on what was sent to anonymous think tanks. We have the financial trails that hard link Republican raised cash to Democrat advertisement. Now, to be clear, what Ronna McDaniel did is not necessarily a crime in the sense of fiscal malfeasance. Technically, this is not an operation consisting of fraud. And that is because, as GOP chairperson, Ronna McDaniel inherits the authority to spend RNC raised money however she sees fit. Now, there is an argument of contractual law and an argument of bylaws, and that to be said that to spend money knowingly on items that are not in the interest of the Republican Party may actually be a violation of the bylaws of the Republican Party. Therefore, while Ronna McDowell may not have committed a legal crime, she may have participated in a bylaw violation. Well, that's quite an interesting theory. But that's not where the point really needs to go, because Ronna McDowell can just disappear, can just drop off the face of the earth, and no one would notice. No one except those who are getting a steady income because of the money that's being misdirected. And that's a key point here. The amount of money that the mega donors are saying they are going to pull from the Republican Party if Ronna is not reelected as RNC chair is substantially less than the amount of money that Ronna McDowell misappropriated and spent on everywhere but Republican candidates. Now you're going, you can't possibly make that calculation. Yes, I can. And the reason I can make that calculation is that there are limits on campaign law finance, on how much any one person can contribute, how they can contribute it. Now, we can take those numbers and we can extrapolate how much a single person, given a certain amount of income, could possibly or plausibly donate to the Republican Party. We can also run these numbers against those who have spoken out that Ronna must be rehired or this income source dries up. Now, unless these mega donors are violating campaign finance law and contributing more to the Republican Party than they are legally allowed to contribute, the total amount of contributions does not even approach 1% of what Ronna misspent. That's a vast gap in resources because the vast majority of Republican Party money doesn't necessarily come from mega donors because of those campaign law limits. Now, there are bonuses. There are things that can be done outside campaign finance laws. I mean, for example, a car dealership could sell you a car for only $1. Now, if you're driving around in a full-blown Mercedes GL, let's call it GLK. If you're driving around in a GLK and you only paid $1 for it, yes, technically you bought the car. 1 second. And the dealer technically lost money on the sale. But that also can count as a campaign or in-kind contribution. You got an item worth some amount of money and you didn't have to pay for it. All you have to do is just do whatever the car dealership wants you to do. If the car dealership says they need a tax break, you work on legislation that gives the car dealership a tax break. Now, that's quite an interesting aspect of this when you consider the mega donors that are threatening to pull support from the Republican Party. The financial support they offer is negligible. It is not going to even make a dent in the budget from those who are supporting Harmeet Dillon and those who will not contribute if Ronna is reelected. I mean, definitively will not contribute to the Republican Party again if Ronna McDowell is reelected as RNC chair. The numbers just don't add up. But we're not seeing the full picture of the numbers because what we're only seeing is the amount of numbers from campaign donations that are done legally. We're not seeing the effects of the off-book donations. And that's a pretty big deal. Because that's what's really going on here is these mega donors are saying that all the perks and bonuses, all of these cheap high-end luxury cars, all of this free housework, all of this lawn care maintenance, all of these free apartments, all of these expensive hotel resorts, that all of this, all of these perks of being in the Republican Party are just going to go away. And they're trying to leverage these off-book value items as reason to keep a corrupt, fiscally malfeasant person in charge as the GOP chair. Now, once you understand that, once you understand what's really on the table and what's not really on the table, once you understand that for a number of people, they're not defending the Republican Party, they're defending their income stream. They're defending how they make money. They're defending the backroom deals. They're defending the sweetheart employment contracts they get after they leave office. They're not interested in adhering to the Republican Party platform. They're only interested in what gets them more money, what gets them more power, what keeps them in office longer. Once we understand that, then we can have a harder look at what's being offered in comparison. We're being offered someone who understands on a legal level the challenges of facing off against the corrupt Democrat establishment. We're looking at somebody who's willing to stand up and support MAGA candidates. We're looking at somebody who's promising to reform the Republican Party and actually do what the party is supposed to do. So maybe in the 2024 elections, the local level Republican Party will not be putting its entire ham fisted hammer. It won't be hand hammering a particular candidate. Instead, it'll be doing what it's supposed to do, setting up the opportunities for the candidates who are registered to run for the election to get out in front of people and say, this is what I'm running for. This is why I'm running. This is why you should vote for me. I'm going to be here at this time. Come see me. Or if you want me to come see you, contact the Republican Party, the local Republican Party. They'll let me know that somebody wants to see me and we'll work something out. Because that's how the party is supposed to work at the local level. That's how the party is supposed to work at the state level. That's how the party is supposed to work at the federal level, and that's not happening. Is Harmeet Dillon the person to make that happen? Probably. She's definitely a better person to make that happen than Ronna McDaniel is, because we know Ronna did not do anything like that, didn't even try. And this comes back to the dark money, the money trail, the question of finance. And this goes all the way back to where we started with the Dailywire. What we're actually looking at is controlled opposition. The Republican Party, under Ronna McDaniel, was squelching the MAGA candidates, forcing the MAGA candidates out, not supporting the MAGA candidates at all in order to silence the quote unquote extreme limits of the party. What Ronna McDowell did is exactly what the contract that was sent to Steven Crowder would have done. It That contract, if Steven Crowder had signed it, would have silenced Steven Crowder from offering any legitimate, contrary, counterpoint view to the Democrat narrative. Or else Steven Crowder would absorb massive financial penalties. And that's exactly what Ronna McDowell did to Herschel Walker, is what she did to Kerry Lake, is what she did to Blake Masters, is what she did to Abe Hamadeh, and the list could just go on and on of every MAGA candidate that Ronna McDowell failed to support, that Ronna McDowell did not put party resources behind, that Ronna McDowell arranged for that money to go anywhere else. So much like Ben Shapiro on the Daily Wire, Ronna McDowell squelched, silenced, and censored the people she was supposed to be reporting, the people she said she was going to support, the people that her job required her to support. She didn't do it. Does that mean that Ronna McDowell is as slimy, is as scummy, is as much of a thief as Ben Shapiro? No. Ben Shapiro's far worse. Because here's the thing. Ben Shapiro got away with it. He got away with it with Jordan Peterson. He got away with it with other Daily Wire contributors. And I think, this is my theory, it's only my theory, but I think that some of those contracts that Daily Wire had signed with Daily Wire contributors, I've got to get a new headset, were coming up for renewal. And I think Ben Shapiro counted on his friendship with Steven Crowder, that if Steven Crowder had signed that contract had just gone, okay, it's from a friend, it's okay, I'm going to sign it. Ben Shapiro could have taken that, gone to every other contributor and said, okay, Ben Shapiro just signed this. You know how smart he is. You know how good he is. Trust me, what we're offering you, your contracts, exact same thing. It's all good. He's good. You're good. Let's keep going. It's controlled opposition. It's silencing the opposition by forcing the opposition to hold to a limitation, to conserve themselves, to step back, to not speak forcefully, to not get in the faces of opponents, to not force the line to be drawn and force the line to be upheld. That's what Ben Shapiro tried to do. And it's imperative that everyone understand how, again, I'm left at scumbag, just how atrociously bad this could have been. But it didn't turn out that way. Instead, now Ben Shapiro's thievery. Again, Ben Shapiro made a play for all of Steven Crowder's assets, and thankfully, Ben Shapiro failed. The scumbag failed. And chances are, after this, Ben Shapiro's probably not going to be able to land another contributor to the Daily Wire ever again. Because now, because of Steven Crowder, Daily Wire potential contributors are going to be aware that Ben Shapiro is trying to steal everything that they built. Ben Shapiro is not in this because he's a foundationalist. Ben Shapiro is not in this because he believes he's doing the right thing. Ben Shapiro is in this to make money. Ben Shapiro is in this to silence whoever he can because that's how he makes money. Ben Shapiro silences voices. He silences the contrary opinion. He silences the counter narrative. That's how Ben Shapiro makes money. That's how the Daily Wire gets advertisers. When you understand that, when you understand the amount of money that is on the table to silence the opposition, you can understand how the Daily Wire manages to succeed. You can understand exactly why mega donors want Ronna McDaniel to stay in office. And you can also understand completely why it is imperative that when the choice for RNC chair comes up, Ronna cannot be allowed to step back into that position. Harmeet Dillon is a viable choice. Now, okay, some people, someone I follow on Twitter, said she could be a fraud. Okay, fair point. I don't know Harmeet Dillon personally. I've never met her. I've never talked to her. I've never been debriefed on a court case by her. I've never been prepared for a court case by her. I have never worked with her. As far as I know, I have never been hired on a contract for any firm that she works with to do any kind of research. I don't know a single thing about her personal life. What I have is her legal record. What I have are her court statements. What I have are her arguments in a court of law. And okay, there's a good example here of somebody who did good in the court, but then not so good outside of court, and that is Ted Cruz. And he kind of, yeah, is the sticking point here in that what Ted Cruz says and what he does doesn't always necessarily match up. I'm not saying he's a snake. I don't think he is. I think Ted Cruz has been involved in politics long enough that he has started to drift over to the side of looking for the balance and not. I don't want to say he doesn't grasp the concept that he's supposed to be the balance. He's supposed to bring the outrageous claims to the left and rein them in. I think he's gone maybe too far into, well, we just need to work with them a little bit more. There's got to be a common ground here. When there's no common ground, when there's no common ground, you don't try to find a balance. You rein the other side back in. That's the point of being the balance. When you tell the other side, no, you're too far. You come back this way. We're not giving up anything. You've got to give up your objective because you're over the line. And to be fair, Harmeet Dillon could turn out to be that kind of person. Harmeet Dillon could be corrupted by the power. But at this moment, at this time, I don't have any hard evidence to suggest that Harmeet is a rhino, that Harmeet is going to do the wrong thing for the right amount of money. And this, I want to say, reflects on Steven Crowder. And I've been kind of avoiding this over the entire topic because I don't like Steven Crowder. And you might ask, well, why don't I like him? He's a lot like you, isn't he? Maybe. But when I watch Crowder's Louder with Crowder videos, when I see him go out onto college campuses and I see him sit down in front of that table, he's got that whatever saying on the front of it, change my mind, I get the distinct feeling that Steven Crowder gets his kicks off of mocking the in, the intelligence declined. I'm saying that Steven Crowder gets his fun out of mocking stupid people. And to be fair, college campuses with significant amounts of liberals are kind of a breeding ground for really stupid people who aren't being taught the basics, don't understand the basics, and kind of get a deer in the headlights look when they're faced with anyone who has studied the basics, who does understand the basics, who does have a grasp on how things actually work. And on one hand, what Steven Crowder does with Change My Mind, okay, it's an effective outreach. I, it, but it rubs me kind of the wrong way. And I'm not sure I'm explaining it correctly, just why it rubs me the wrong way. And there's another personality that's like that, Russell Brand. First time I think I saw Russell was he was starring a reasonably priced car on Top Gear, and for those moments he was funny. And then I looked him up afterwards and just kind of I can't stand the guy. There's just something about him that rubs me personally the wrong way. There's something about Crowder that just rubs me the wrong way. Now that being said, I make a habit of lobbing Molotov cocktails at the opposition. I love being the ghost in the shadows, the person who makes people wonder how the could he know that? He can't possibly have proof. He cannot know that. There is no way he can be certain about that. Or, my favorite, how did he get into our systems? Who's the leaker? I love doing that. I love watching the confusion. I love watching people run around in circles as they try to figure out what information I have, how I could have gotten it, who talked, what leaked, how did I get in. I love it. I get my kicks off of it so much. I get such a dramatic joy as I watch people just look absolutely confused. I'm almost as bad as the anti-scam guy with the blue hair. I love how the guy gets into their systems and just tweaks and twirls them all the way around, and they're like, "How did he get in? How's he? He can't be watching us. This can't be." I love that. So maybe I'm not so different from Crowder. Maybe that's why I just don't like the guy because look at him and I see someone who maybe hasn't had bullets thrown his way, or maybe he has had bullets thrown his way and has, had to take cover and return fire. I really don't know. I don't think he has. But given all of that, given what Steven Crowder does, given who he interacts with, given who he's worked with, given all of that, it doesn't surprise me that Steven Crowder would record phone calls. In fact, if I was him, I'd probably be recording every single phone call. Now, this comes back to a circle around me because I've actually had this happen before when dealing with certain vendors where I've revealed in the past that I have synthetic ear canals. Holes had to be drilled in my ears in order for me to hear. And I was deaf for the first couple years of my life. My hearing didn't develop like other people's hearings. And in certain circumstances, my ears can be blocked and I can't hear a thing at all, or I will have difficulty hearing or understanding people. One of the ways that I get around this, when especially in vocal communication, is I will use a text to speech program. Now, in order to use a text to speech program so that I can see or theoretically see what somebody is saying to verify that what I'm hearing is what they're actually saying, I have to record the call. So if I have a call recording going on because I'm doing text to speech, if somebody's looking or expecting a call to be recorded, they'll ask, "Are you recording this call?" And go, "Technically, yes, I'm doing text to speech so that I can see what you're saying to make sure what I'm hearing matches what I think I'm hearing." I mean, I've got a pretty exotic hearing. I don't want to call it a disability because I can go into any frequency hearing test and nothing's wrong. It's only when I go in for a spatial hearing test that, uh, yeah, let's just say my HRT, head related transfer function, that's extremely complicated, but we're going off on a tangent. Anyways, I can understand from a security standpoint, I can understand from a practicality standpoint why Steven Crowder would be recording phone calls. And this is a lot like me. If you are lobbing Molotov cocktails at the opposition on a regular basis, it's probably a good security procedure to have a record of what calls were made. And we circle back around to the original question, or one of the original questions that I posed. What tipped Steven Crowder off? Why was he recording these phone calls? Because I don't think he was just recording them for no reason. I think Steven Crowder was already aware that the Daily Wire was not going to be on a level with this. He was already aware that Ben Shapiro wasn't his friend. We can circle this back around and point this at Ronna McDaniel. We know she's not our friend. We know she doesn't have our interest in mind. We know she is opposed to a MAGA agenda. Since we know that, why are we not more suspicious? Why are we not demanding more details? Why are we not wanting to get this on record, what she's saying, what her defenses are? Why are we not asking questions? So, like I said, somewhere way at the start of this, is that what went on with the Daily Wire and what's going on with the RNC right now are very much the same scenario. A scumbag, a person who is deliberately doing something, performing an action that actively harms, goes in contrast to what they say they are doing, where the actions and the words are not the same thing, and they're getting busted in real time and they're getting called out over and over. Now, as I close this out, I'm going to be trying to send this to some people who have asked, why should I vote for Ronna McDowell? Why should I not vote for Ronna McDowell? Or why should I vote for Ronna McDowell? Or why should I not vote for Harmeet? Or why should I vote for Harmeet? But I think this is also very critical to go out to say, like Jeremy at the quartering. I think this is something that maybe should be brought to Ben Shapiro's attention himself, that his reputation as a snake is not a new one. It's been known for years, and that he's had Fideum Vigilantes kind of going, uh, something's not right here. Do we need to take a closer look? Well, we didn't have to. It was handed to us on a silver platter. It was handed to everyone on a silver platter. Marion Archive. If you're a representative for the Republican Party and you're voting for the RNC chair, Harmeet Dillon is your obvious choice. If you are a writer, a content creator, and you're trying to break out on your own, or you're trying to get hired at a larger institution to get a larger following, don't even think about going to the Daily Wire. Now, have been avoiding talking the exact link between the Daily Wire and big tech. I have been avoiding going over who exactly is pouring money into the Daily Wire, other than it is content. They are paying for content control. They're not paying for content production. They're paying to keep people from saying certain things. That's an important distinction. But this is something that I would actually encourage other independent investigators and independent journalists to take a look at. Make some calls, talk to some people, talk to some congressmen, talk to some representatives. Start asking more questions about how this money is getting from point A to point B. And if you are in federal law enforcement or state law enforcement, and some of these people are in your district or in your jurisdiction, start asking questions. Now, if your superior says, no, you can't do that, you've now got more questions to ask. If your publisher says don't follow this story, you've now got more questions to ask. And I'm either story, either the Dailywire or Ronna McDaniel, if you're trying to follow the money trail. But that's what I got for you. I hope you enjoyed it. And now at the very brief moment, as we're all the way at the end of this, and I've been recording for what, an hour and 15 minutes. Okay, what's the whole point of going on with this looping screen? This is something I put together. Uh, this is an older system. That is not a new graphics card there. That's actually, by today's standards, a pretty ancient one, and I'm really just running a stress test on it. And I figured that this was probably going to be more enjoyable to watch as this just loops over and over if you just need some background noise, and hopefully it wasn't too bad to look at. I'm Aaron Archive, and I'll catch you later.